Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
Okay, welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Queen Divas podcast, where we discuss all things health, wellness, and fitness with my beautiful co-host, Stephanie Ayala McHugh.
Oh, and hello, Ali, Christos. And how do I, hold on, because
this is now going to be, well, let's actually just, because Kyah, who is our guest, who is coming on to join us today to talk all things shit, can just listen to our 1 second as we talk about all things wedding catch up, because we got married last Friday. So
yes, you did.
Woman for a whole week.
Congratulations
today. And
you were so stunning, Ali. I'm just I'm gutted I couldn't be there.
Definitely had a big hole in the wedding that was you and Kerry not being able to come in it. We totally understand though. So we're going to be celebrating with you guys in Orlando very, very soon. But it was definitely, you were sorely missed, and there was definitely a big gap.
So much
there.
FOMO.
You guys not being.
I was literally having the worst FOMO, but
we had so much fun, babe, and it was such an incredible lead up. And for everyone listening to this, I will go into this. I did actually have a series of treatments at Kyah's center leading into the wedding. And we will talk a little bit about some of the reasons why and why I found my way into having colonic irrigation as well. But I was so excited for this conversation because we have had so much interest too on the social media ever since Steph and I started to loosely talk about poo and poo health, and checking up and having coaching conversations around digestion and bowel movements with our clients. And then obviously I started sharing my own journey and the fact that I have an autoimmune disease that really makes colonic irrigation therapy something that I have to do at least a couple of times a year, but I've now stepped into doing it really more frequently, and I'm now having them done monthly for so many other health benefits. And so it was absolutely exciting for us to bring someone on that was an expert in shit, quite literally, that could actually talk to us.
Oh, yes. We talk so much about poop and shit all the time to our clients. So having an expert to be able to kind of back up everything that Ali and I just keep reiterating to our clients, or even just to our listeners, is going to be pretty epic for today's topic. And
without further ado, I will welcome onto our episode today the owner and lead therapist. Kyah Seary is one of Brisbane's most experienced, I believe, colon hydrotherapist, and she actually started her journey with colonics back in 2006. And as we've sort of mentioned off air, she's from Seattle, so she is actually an American that we've now claimed as an Aussie because she's really good for our
she sounds she totally sounds Aussie.
Sounds like an Aussie, so I'm 100% claiming her, and I'm sure her husband's gonna be happy with that claim. And after colonics actually transformed her own life, so I'm going to let Kyah talk us through that journey soon. But
welcome.
She has come into this space now and has received, accolades and awards, and they are literally, this massive holistic center. And this is the place I always go to. So everyone that's always asking me about my journey and what I do, Kyah is at the head of where I go, and it's herself and another therapist, Rachel, that I see, and they are by far the best that I've ever had in all of my years. And as I mentioned, my autoimmune disease was detected and diagnosed, sort of 2 decades ago. And I used to have these frequently back at the start because of that situation. I then was able to go quite a period of time without them. And I can honestly say that my work with these ladies in this particular center is just by far a totally different experience to anything I had previously gone through. And I didn't find them enjoyable at all. And I wouldn't say that, the whole process is entirely enjoyable, and we will get into it and Kyah will explain how it works. But it's more manageable, and it's actually, I don't know, I look forward to them now. So at least that's a plus. But I guess, Kyah, tell everyone, so everyone listening to this that does not have any exposure to what a colonic irrigation is, Like,
Please.
I guess firstly, how did you come into it? Tell us about your journey and your own personal, comeback from poor health, utilizing it, and then what exactly it is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, what an intro. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here because this is definitely one of my favorite topics. I absolutely love talking all things gut health and shit. So
Yes.
I will give you guys who have never heard of colonics before or have no idea what a colonic is, a bit of an overview. So colonic irrigation or colon hydrotherapy or colonics, it's all the same thing. It's basically a way to gently remove all the built up waste and toxicity out of the colon using just purified water. So this is a really gentle process. It's very safe. We practice closed system colon hydrotherapy. And what this means is there's actually no smells, no pushing, no sounds. It's very, very unembarrassing as if you can imagine that.
100%. I've had an experience where it was not like this, and that's what I think probably put me
uncomfortable
having them, even though I needed them from my health point of view for quite a while. And then, like I said, this is almost enjoyable with you guys. But maybe explain what it is.
Because Ali, so you have an autoimmune disease that you go and see her for, right? Like, so what would be, I guess, like an ideal client for you aside from autoimmune diseases or even having to get maybe some cleanse done? But I mean, do we have a standard?
Colonics can absolutely, colonics, the underlying form of colonics, it's detoxification, right? So I feel like that's such a buzzword these days, and your gut health is such a buzzword. Why is that? Well, because 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. So obviously, I mean, linked to all over health, autoimmune disease, but also, just general wellness, how your body's able to fight things off, how strong you are. And then your gut is responsible for everything. All disease begins in the gut. Ancient philosophers have been quoted saying, and for colonics, it's basically a really gentle, easy, simple way to wash all that toxicity that gets stuck in your body's own sewage system. So your colon is your waste track of your body. That's so like
anyone is a great candidate for this, because I feel like everyone falls underneath that.
100%, definitely. Yeah. So Kyah, actually, you had your personal journey, you had toxicity as an issue, right? So this is something where it wasn't even an autoimmune disease. She literally was going about living life, and explain to everyone a little bit about what that looked like. Your
story,
Yeah. So I personally started having colonics when I was about 16 years old. And that was because my body was actually about to shut down. It was so toxic. So I had struggled unknowingly with constipation probably through my childhood years. And then shit really hit the fan when I was about 13 years old.
Unintended, sorry.
But it's such, I'll try to throw a few of those in there for you.
That's such an Aussie saying, by the way. Like I told you.
Sorry, I'm like, she totally hit that one. Sorry. Keep
girl. Gotta keep you on your toes. So when I was 13 years old, my bowel actually shut down completely. So I stopped having any form of bowel movements. But here's the kicker. I didn't know, because I didn't know that you're supposed to be going to the toilet a couple times a day. I didn't know you were even supposed to be going every day. And I was an only child. And so I didn't have brothers and sisters running around, using the toilet. I had no idea. My girlfriends and I didn't talk about it. My parents are quite traditional and very closed book, even though they are actually both doctors. So my dad is a cardiologist and my mom was an anesthetist. Wow. And so I grew up in a very medical household, but it totally slipped under the radar that I actually was not going to the toilet. And at the time, once we sort of figured that out, actually, I guess backtracking a bit. So I stopped going to the toilet. I didn't know. And it wasn't until my body actually started to almost go into what felt like labor pains, trying to eliminate all of this toxic waste out. So think about how much you eat every day. Right.
Exactly. I was just thinking that, like all that food volume
where does it go if it doesn't come out, y'all?
Where does it go?
Exactly.
I don't know.
I always say that to anyone.
Nowhere.
Yeah, it stays in you.
Listening to this, how long is your bowel?
Yes,
bowel,
I always bring this up.
How long
To
is
your
it?
bowel is
like,
about
boof.
2 meters long. Your whole digestive tract, so from the top to the bottom, is about 8 meters long. But
So
your
imagine-
bowel, your large intestine, your colons, all the same thing, is about 2 meters long.
Imagine how much you have compacted that whole
a mile of shit
Yeah,
in you,
right?
Well,
like,
And then
literally.
that's fermenting and releasing stuff.
Oh
and
my God. Well, let me just tell you, my symptoms that I had were, I had extreme abdominal, bloating,
Pain, like,
but pain all the time. My brain was so foggy. My skin was quite pale and yellow. My eyes were quite yellow. I couldn't think, I couldn't focus. I could barely get out of bed most days. My body was literally going into auto intoxication because it was just starting to shut down, because elimination is part of the life cycle. You have to be eliminating toxicity. Otherwise it essentially repoisons you via your bloodstream. So that's what was happening to me. And one night my body just, I think in a desperate attempt to get some of this stuff out, literally started going into these cramping pains that felt like labor pains. And I got rushed to the emergency room. They thought I had appendicitis.
I was going to say, your appendix bursting is what I would have assumed.
Yeah. And that's what we thought. And they did an x-ray and the doctor came out and he said, girl, you're full of shit. You're full of shit. That's what he said to me.
Epic. I'm sorry, but they saw it in an x-ray. That's an amount of shit that, I mean, that's a
And it's actually something that we see a lot in our clinic. People actually bring us in their x-rays and they're like, I'm really compacted. And we're like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
We can take care of this.
When you were that compacted, obviously, and your entire intestinal tract was just completely full, what did they do in the hospital immediately to help give you any relief? Did they do anything? Was it enema only? Like what did they do?
Nothing. They sent me home with a few laxatives.
I was going to say, what, like Miralax, and just like, here you go.
Yeah.
Off you
And
go. Oh my
red
God.
hot spoiler alert, it didn't work.
No.
How many clients that even in scenarios, like some of the symptoms that you mentioned there at the beginning, I'm like, God, I already had like dingers go off in my head of certain people, right? Like that I already knew. I'm like, yep, I've been saying this is some gut issues. And what you just confirmed though, as far as having even like the abdominal pain or just not being able to go regularly and go days, right? Like you probably didn't even know how many days you would go. And the irregularity of people not being aware that going every single day, when I had talked to clients and they kind of look at me crazy when I say a few times a day, they're like, what, a few times a day? Like, between 1 to 3, a couple would be great. I don't even go every day. I'm sorry, I would take myself to the hospital.
So for everyone listening, you're actually supposed to have a bowel movement around 30 minutes after you eat every single meal. So if you think about the people in our land that are eating 6 meals a day, you should be going close to 6 times a day.
Pretty regularly.
And there are a lot of people that are going once every 3 to 4 days and they think that's normal. So I totally understand what you're saying, Steph, and people's reactions, because I get the same thing every time I say it. I also completely understand Kyah's misconception about what was normal, because that's actually more normal than most people think that going once or twice a week is okay. It's crazy. But I think the biggest thing for me in coming into the process of having these regular treatments was actually identifying how long stuff can sit in you for, and it is scarily long. And for someone like me with ulcerations inside and perforations inside the bowel, I can't afford to have stuff stuck in transit and creating more systemic issues in those little pockets. Actually, one of your therapists, Kyah, explained this really well. She talked about the fact that inside the bowel you have these little I don't even know how she explained them exactly, but they're these little bits that basically will hold stuff as they come through, right? Yeah. And then she's sort of explained about how when the flow moves properly and you're having enough fiber and you've got, a healthy diet, stuff should come through that pick up items inside these little recesses and carry it out, right? But if you are not hydrated enough, your bowel is not hydrated enough, and then you are not having the right amount of, soluble and insoluble fiber, you're not having that happen. So in these pockets, then you've got these little waste particles that continue to ferment and decay and breed gas. Now, when then you breed gas, you create like a brick wall that further traps these little recesses. And then that big pile coming through can't move as efficiently and effectively as it should. So you could then still have a clearing out, but that pocket might stay there. So you might have a pocket that's been sitting there for a few years. How gross is that? When you think about that, that's like,
you literally think of
shit
shit
colonics every day.
Stomach. God.
Yeah.
So gross.
It's
The
grotesque,
other thing
but-
people don't, the other thing people don't realize is, and we talk a lot about this in our clinic, is that acidity, alkaline balance. So what you are eating matters and how you're feeling. So stress is another big one. So the other thing that can happen, yes, we can get those pockets, but the other thing that happens, and we've got some great videos on this on our social media of like inside the colon, but basically if you're eating McDonald's and you're eating these really acidic processed foods, your body sees that as an intruder and they break down very acidically. Dairy is another big one. And basically the body produces mucus to coat this acidic material as it comes through. And when you're eating these things a couple of times a day, acidic stuff, coffee, like alcohol is acidic. Your body's producing this mucus, and that mucoid plaque gets stuck on the lining of your colon, becomes very sticky, creates a really great environment for parasites and other bad bacteria to thrive. And then more stool gets stuck to it. And again, like you said, if you're not having enough fiber to act like that broom to sweep through the colon, you're not eliminating it. And it's just building up and building up and building up. One of my girlfriends used to be a colon hydrotherapist not far from us, and she actually had a friend who worked in the morgue, and when they would open people up, sometimes they'd find upwards of 10 kilograms of old compacted
y'all 20 pounds
of tar. It looks like tar. It's like
Oh.
rubber tar. And one of the products that we work a lot with is called Ultimate Fiber, which I'm sure you've tried.
Yeah.
And
I drink
that
it most days.
pulls, what comes out when you take it. It's like this dark, it pulls all the heavy metals out, this dark toxicity. And so many people are walking around with kilos and kilos and kilos of waste in there. That is just exactly what you're saying. Fermenting, those toxins get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. And that can be the baseline root cause of so many of today's health problems.
It's very true. And like, I always urge most people where I think you just could need a really good cleaning out, and there's probably a whole bunch of shit in here doing some crap to us. I urge them to go get an irrigation, because it really does give us just a freshen up, and it allows you to start to identify, okay, well, is this still an ongoing issue for us, or is this something we're starting to correct via getting rid of some of this waste? Now, interesting side note is, when you talk about these kilos we're carrying around, there's actual truth to this, because Steph, imagine this. This is me who's getting them relatively frequently. I'm taking my Ultimate Fiber, have been for years now. I literally go daily. I can, and it's not uncommon, can drop anywhere between 2 to 4 kilos with a treatment. That's
I could totally see that.
So
like
imagine someone.
Well, I have clients do colonoscopies, right? They have to and again, this is not a colonoscopy by any means, I know that, but even let's see of the results, right? That if they have to prep for a colonoscopy, even they drop between, like what you're saying, 2 to, obviously 4 kilos, being anywhere from 3 to 8 pounds, right? Like here, it's going to be a drastic drop. And I normally see that every time they have to prep for one. So this is so interesting to see that this is a complete different, this is actually my question to you is knowing like the main difference I know is the water, right? Like this is actually pushed in, cleansed through water, and a colonoscopy is clearly something going through you. So it's a little different, but the preparation side of things, isn't that similar, right? Like it's kind of almost like the same process.
It's the same idea. So cleansing the colon, and it's really interesting you say that. It's actually a reason we do get a lot of clients come in, because they say, you know what, I actually felt really good after my colonoscopy prep. I wonder if this is something that's more sustainable for my bowel to do. And I'm wondering if I have a toxic buildup in there, because I actually felt really good when I, emptied my colon out. And the difference is huge, but the idea is the same. So, colonics are so gentle, nurturing, and actually great for the bowel, but also great for your other organs. We cleanse the bowel using hydration, so water, and water it's been a purification method for the body since the beginning of time. So all ancient cultures, goes back to purification with water. It's gentle, it's natural, and it's also going to have so many other benefits for you, and it's non-irritating as well. So when you're doing a colonoscopy prep using chemical laxatives these days, those are highly irritating for the bowel, and for most people that's a really unpleasant experience. And they're very
stuck on the toilet, like
they're very dehydrating too. So when you're taking any kind of laxative, and that's a huge one. Laxative abuse is huge. That is a huge problem. It's something that when I first started my journey, the only thing the doctors gave me was laxatives. That's all I knew to take. And that probably set me 10 steps back, because it's not a fix in any way. It causes bowel dependency. So your bowel doesn't want to move at all if you're not taking the laxative. But also it's kind of like, it's one of those things, they don't work as well. And so you have to keep taking more and more and more to get that irritation, that stimulation. So that is a really bad cycle. That's one of the therapists that works at my clinic. That was one of the reasons she got into colon hydrotherapy, was because she suffered with such bad constipation from childhood, became addicted to laxatives, and that they did so much damage, and then found colonics and actually went back and healed her bowel. So there's so much I think people hand out they pop laxatives, they think it's nothing, but there's just no education around what that's really doing long term. And so that's the difference. The colonoscopy, obviously they're sticking a camera in, it's really, and they actually, a lot of things you'll hear about colonics is, it's not safe, they're gonna perforate your bowel and blow up your colon, and I shouldn't do this. Well, a colonoscopy blows your colon up 8 times the amount of the absolute highest pressure that we would ever deem safe. So we blow, we use a water pressure that never ever exceeds 2 psi. And usually all that feels like is, oh my gosh, I really have to poop. That's what that feeling is. 1 psi is like, maybe 2 psi is like, I gotta go, dog. And any more than that, and that's why you have to go under general anesthesia, is because that pain would be excruciating. So whenever we're looking at the safety of colonics, if medically deemed it is safe to not perforate your bowel, and it does happen during colonoscopies. There's a lot of reports of that. As any medical procedure has side effects and risks. Everything has risks. You have to mitigate those for yourself. But if the medical community has decided that colonoscopies are safe at that level of pressure in the colon, colonics and enemas are so gentle, so safe. And especially that's why we love the closed system colon hydrotherapy, because when you're in our clinic and when you're in a closed system colon hydrotherapy treatment, you always have a professional therapist in guiding the entire session. And for me, I think that's really important, especially if you've never had colonics before. It can be really daunting. What people don't realize is if you have a lot of stored toxicity in the body, it can be really uncomfortable when it starts to come out.
It can be actually,
you don't know what's going on. So you're like, please guys, walk me through this.
But this is what I usually tell my clients. I'm like, did you really think you were going to get away with eating, Hungry Jacks for 10 years? And there would be like no side effects there, and the alcohol and the stress and the caffeine, did we really think we were getting off scot-free? Our body usually gives us symptoms, they're warning signs, we don't listen. And then to backtrack and, have to, instead of prevention, now we're working on finding a treatment or a cure is much more difficult, but it's also a learning process. If it was so easy, if you were so toxic, and look, some people go through it without without a problem at all. My colonics, now that my gut is so healthy and I'm so healthy, are a breeze. But if you're just starting off that journey and your toxic load is high, or if you've been like me and you've been so constipated for years and years and years, there is so much shit in there. You have no idea, but you just have to, it's like anything, your first day back at the gym, it's not easy. You don't get abs overnight, like nothing good is easy, right?
I can say it can definitely be super painful. And especially if you have like a gas pocket, Steph, it's like, I can't even begin to describe to you what it feels like, but it's like right up there with like,
is it like sometimes you get those really deep cramps when you're on your cycle that you really can't.
Oh, worse than that. It's worse than that.
Okay.
Often you'll feel, so if you've been quite toxic, if you've been quite toxic, you'll often find you get a bit nauseous, because as the water's coming in, we're essentially hydrating it all. It's starting to, we're really stirring it all up, and your other organs are like, okay, we're ready. And as that release happens, all that goes away. So the relief is also as instant as the cramp comes, and the relief is incredible because you can feel it even up to your head. You get this sense of clarity and calm that comes after a big toxic flush. But also once your colon starts to release, so you'll start to see this color come through. And if you guys want to check out some poo videos, I've got plenty for you. But that's how we know
everything, Steph. You can see, like, you can have your therapist literally looking at your stuff and accurately assessing what food you've been eating, because you can see
this may sound like a dumb question, but I'm very, like, I guess, uninformed as how this process would be. So do you have something attached to you and it's just coming out?
Yeah, so Kyah, explain it.
Okay.
Picture for everyone who has never had one, because it is.
Sorry, I don't have any visuals here in front of me.
Okay, so essentially, you're laying on what looks like a massage sort of table bed, you're slightly propped up, nice and comfy with a pillow. At the beginning of a session, you'll just roll over onto your left side. The therapist, so there's in a closed system, which is what we practice, there's an inlet hose and an outlet hose. So there's a speculum that looks a little bit scarier than it is, because it just it only goes in probably like 2 inches, but it has to go in far enough for your body to just accept it. It's not painful at all. It just feels a little bit funny. I guess it'd be sort of comparable to inserting a tampon. It's sort of a weird, but it's fine. And then once it's inserted, but like comparable. A lot of people are like, oh, colonics are so painful. I'm like, you have 3 kids, like you've birthed 3 times. Like, I don't think that this is going to be an issue for you, like this is.
You've been through labor, you're fine.
You're fine. We tell our guy clients, we're like, this is the closest you'll ever come to understanding your partner's cycle or any kinds of labor pains.
It's pretty true.
Yeah, it's the closest they'll ever come. But really, for most, it's a very gentle experience. So anyways, you roll over onto your side, we insert a speculum. Attached to that speculum, we have an inlet hose. So that's where the purified water all comes in. And then once you roll back over, we attach the outlet hose, and that's just sits under your bottom. You're fully covered up. So we've got a towel over you, and we've got, relaxing spa music. You don't even know what's happening. But essentially, water comes in and waste comes out. So you don't have to do anything at all as the client. We work with your body and your colon. So then we do a series of fills. So we'll turn on the water. The water starts to come in, but also starts to come out as that outlet hose is open. So it's just sort of flowing in, flowing out. And then what we do are a series of fills. So essentially what that means is we start to slowly fill the colon with water, because your colon is so big, we have to get that water back around into the organ to really start to soften and hydrate and get everything out of those pockets, and whatever's built up on the side. So that's when you can start to feel that little bit of pressure, but it's again so low. We do such a gentle treatment. So basically we block off the outlet hose, water starts to flow in via the inlet hose, and then you would let your therapist know when you're starting to feel that fullness or that oh my God, I need to poo feeling. That's
gotcha.
what we're going for. So everyone is different. Some people are so sensitive and it's really tough to get water in, and other people just fill for minutes at a time and take a 3-liter water fill, and then the release is just epic. So everyone's body is different. Every day is different. Everyone comes from a different place. So for me, when I first started having colon hydrotherapy, I mean, it was an instant fix for me though, which is pretty incredible because colon hydrotherapy actually has no side effects. You might get a detox symptom, but that's very different to a side effect, as opposed to all the laxatives and all the really invasive treatments that were tried before. I was actually facing basically the last thing that the doctor said to me, the only thing left that I had to try was actually a colorectomy, which is where you remove 90% of the bowel. And I would have had a poo bag when I was 16 years old. So that is when, so my bowel was not moving. No one ever asked me how much water I drank every day. No one ever asked me. And I had 2 very medical parents. And so I saw the top specialist of everything because we had access to that. And the very top leading gastroenterologist in Seattle said, yeah, this is all that's left for us to do. No one ever asked about my stress levels, how things were going at home, which weren't very great. No one ever asked what I was eating. They literally just sent me away, said, eat more fiber, like your Sultana brand. And then it was to the point when I was 16 that I was facing this totally life-altering surgery. You can't just put 90% of your colon back if it doesn't work. The surgery had a 70% success rate, but what does that look like? I would have just had loose stools for the rest of my life, and that probably only would have lasted, say, 20 years. So I'd be looking at another surgery in my 30s to repair an organ. Whatever's left. I don't think I would have been able to have children. At that time, my hormones were so out of balance as well that they diagnosed me with PCOS and said I'd never have kids, that I would never fall pregnant naturally because my hormones, and I had to be on the pill for the rest of my life and blah 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 blah.
Literally just a compacted bowel.
I healed my gut and everything else sorted itself out. Never a problem. Since I've started having colonics, doing my coffee enemas, all that, no health issues.
Yeah, crazy.
75% of autoimmune diseases and just diseases in general start in the gut. For at least a decade of you neglecting and just pushing off symptoms. And this is such a fact. And like, you can ask anybody that maybe has an autoimmune disease at the moment, that they might have brushed things under the rug and just kept, thinking things were normal, and that all these symptoms that we're even talking about were for years, right? And even in your scenario, like from childhood all the way through teenage years, and you probably did your whole life, right? And then 16 years, I guess, build up, and you were already in a place where you were going to be bedridden essentially for the rest of your life, almost in a way. This is ridiculous.
But isn't it amazing, because it shows you how important that actual proper bowel movements are, the actual systemic effect that the bowel has on your overall health, the longevity, the quality of life that you lead, and then also its direct impact on every other fucking organ. It's crazy.
Oh, man.
And so
everything.
I think when we talk about how important your poo is, it's really like we joke about it, but it really is a very important thing. And it's the one part that if anyone ever starts stressing with me and clients, carrying on about scale weight or carrying on about, even showing signs of, changes in energy, and there's lethargy or there's different symptoms coming up, and I know that it's not linked to their menstruation cycle, my immediate thing is let's talk bowels. What do they look like? How frequent are you having them? How big are they? Are you fully evacuated? Do you feel empty and free? Or are we still feeling like, we got some more junk in the trunk? Like we start having some really big shit show convos because you need to, because they are always going to be a precursor. Any kind of, change to that digestive tract is going to be a precursor to all these other things. And what do people normally immediately do? I've gained fat, I'm going to cut calories. Like that's going to fix everything. No, it's not. Maybe you just need a big shit, love. Maybe
exactly. But you know what she hit, actually, one of the things that I find most interesting is how she was touching on her hormones, because how imbalanced and how bad her gut was. She saw and obviously had a lot of hormonal issues as well. And when she fixed her gut, she immediately said her hormones just all regulated and they balance themselves out. That right there is such a big it's just a precursor to let us know too, if our hormones are off, maybe it's not so much the hormones that are imbalanced, but so much so that we have some issues in our gut, some gut dysbiosis, right? Some IBS, so maybe
100%.
some just builds up in our gut that needs to get out. And I mean, it's pretty common nowadays, right, for women to be dealing with these hormonal imbalances or PCOS and having, you know, of course, some other maybe symptoms that we just label as normal during our cycle, like how Ali is bringing up, like our feedback, that biofeedback, when just really doing those check-ins, like we can always tell with just the inflammation or even just the distension of the gut. Like the gut itself literally looks like it has a little food baby in there. And you're like, no matter how much you diet, no matter how much, you know, you're doing your training, and you can just see that little extra lower belly. And it's like, this girl literally has a 6-pack above the little lower belly, right? But it's literal shit in their gut. And
that's actually pretty common. It's pretty common in our sport, but it's
for the competitors
in general, because most people don't recognize that that's what it is, and they put it down to it being fat only, which is just sick to me. But you know, I want to track back for 1 second, Kyah, because this was actually something that we identified the very first time I came in, because it just so happened that when I first came to see Kyah, I was actually just starting to work through the chronic pain state and was starting to come through that with some really big focus on psychosomatic work. So this was those emotional, suppressed, repressed stuff that were linking anchors to this back injury that I had actually healed, but my body was acting like it wasn't healed and I was still in all this pain. And ironically, I was going through massive issues with constipation. Now, one of the things that actually brought it to a head was Kyah and I in our very first treatment. Yeah, we had a big conversation. Now, she literally had me on the table talking to her about everything that I'd been going through, what we'd been working on, how I was starting to work on this psychosomatic anchor and how I was getting these improvements and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, all of a sudden, massive release. But we had been trying for a good 20 minutes or so with nothing coming. I was having all these issues with even trying to get anything filled. But she distracted me by opening me up, and I started to discuss things that were heavily weighted on me, or that I was already working through, that I had been repressing. And it was quite funny, but the minute that the floodgate opened, literally the floodgate fucking opened. We had everything evacuate. And I reckon we probably would have had that space where I had that compaction for many years that I wasn't really aware of. But I want to bring this back because, Kyah, how often do you see that emotion and stress states are actually massive constrictors to the digestive? And look, anyone that understands the parasympathetic and central nervous system and the rest and digest component of the parasympathetic, when we're in this heightened state of fight or flight, central nervous system, you know, sympathetic, you do not rest and digest. The body takes, you know, energy and efforts and blood flow and all of the things that require that whole process requires, and puts it in other directions because it's getting ready to flee the scene.
Yeah,
tries you to run from something, right? Exactly. So pretty much like closes the system down to do the things you're actually wanting it to do, which is pass the waste. And that's what had happened to me. So when we started to talk through it, and I had this release, and then I was proactively working on all this parasympathetic nervous system input activity, I just started to correct the flow and direction of resources and efforts and nutrients and, you know, everything with the body. And I started functioning better. And then we started to hydrate from internally, and everything started to flow better. And so I did want to bring it back to this, because I think a lot of times women don't realize that when we are working through stuff in life, and that might be marital, it might be parenting, it might be with our own parents, not with our children, we might have issues on so many platforms, and we have not talked about it, we've not processed it, we've not serviced ourselves to heal through something. So trauma itself can lead to massive issues in the gut and the bowel. And I was I was living that. I did live that. And I know, Kyah, we discussed that, and she really did literally open the literal floodgates for me. And I've not looked back, and I've had no issues since. And, you know, as I've even shared on my story today, anyone watching it, I've moved through all of my chronic pain states and now got access to movement patterns as well as bodily functions that I didn't have great access to previously. So, Kyah, do you want to shed a little bit more light on that than maybe what my own experience I've just shared may have done?
Oh, absolutely. Every day we see the gut-brain connection with stress. I mean, that is probably the number one real issue today, is stress and emotional problems. And it's everything that you just said is 100% right. So it's as soon as colonics actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So that rest and digest begins to turn on. But as colon hydrotherapists, one of the main things we do, we're big listeners, but we're big question askers. And it's just finding that pain point that's been holding on in the body and just allowing those floodgates to open. As soon as someone starts to divulge what trauma or whatever they're holding on to, that is when we see those magical shifts. And that's when we see everything in the body just release. It is 100%. 100% accurate. Like it's actually one of my favorite things to watch. And the emotional
like it's pretty crazy.
I'm amazed just listening to both of you, listening to your story, Allie, and just because of knowing you, you know, and I remember how stressful that event in life was. And I mean, it was a comeback. I mean, it was from a broken back. I mean, you were literally coming back from a broken back. Like that comeback is still probably up there with your comeback from post baby, like literally, you know. So for that emotional side, I think of attachment that a lot of us can have with life, with family, with loved ones, with our own selves. I think that has such a good connection that you guys are making there. I think that once we do release anything in life though, right? Like when we let go, we finally kind of feel free. It's kind of going hand in hand with what you guys are saying. This is even just from an emotional side of things, but I just watch from clients how much stress really can take almost that control over their life, as much as they just go into this massive, so many things on their plate. They are overachievers, perfectionists. They are literally just doing so much and then chronically dieting on top of that. They're like, oh, I want to look good. And I'm like cutting my calories, and they're overtraining. And they literally put themselves in this hyper alert state all the time. They're not getting good rest, even though they're that little hamster on the wheel. They think that that's like what they're supposed to be doing. And I can just relate with just watching it from afar, of seeing how it affects their gut, their system, right? Like their overall health. And for those that actually take a step back and actually take maybe a little moment, right? Just to kind of figure out, do I have these issues? Because when we neglect them, we're then going to think it maybe is our diet. Maybe it is our training program. So here you come to Allie or Steph, and they're like, I need to increase my intensity, or I need to cut my calories, right?
They're like, you need to go see Kyah and have
need a shit.
Like, you need to go take a shit, because you actually really need to go and get all of it out of you, right? Or we need to fix your gut, because right now, so many gut issues across the globe. I mean, I don't think it's just one country, although the US is fucked, honestly. Like we have such a bad case of gut issues, of honestly autoimmune diseases, of obesity. I mean, gosh, like that alone is a disease.
And then it kind of makes you wonder, right? Is there chicken before the egg? Is there a prevalence now of some of these diseases and conditions because they're simply toxic and backed up? Or is it they have those conditions, so therefore they become toxic and backed up? Like it really does make you start to question it. And look, there's no, for everyone listening to this, my father passed from bowel cancer. Bowel related issues are a thing. It can be genetic. I have ulcerations.
My father got cancer, remember, in the small intestine, the duodenum. And I mean, this is why we went so big into gut health, right? I mean, this is just.
It's one of those situations where you go, okay, like it is a autoimmune process. And for me, it was something where they told me I'd have to have 10 tablets a day for the rest of my life. And I was going to be like Kyah. They were, sort of talking about the fact that I would eventually maybe have to have parts of my bowel cut out, blah, 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 blah. I was internally hemorrhaging. When I got to the hospital, when I first got diagnosed when I was 25, I don't think I've ever shared this on a podcast before. I put it off for like a year because it was one of those areas and issues where it's a little bit embarrassing when you're dealing with something in the back end. And I had been experiencing a whole bunch of some of the things that like what Kyah was discussing. But at the same time, I was having these motions where I thought I was going to the toilet and evacuating. It was only after a couple of weeks when I was still having all these pains and all these other symptoms that I thought, what is going on? I'm going to have a look, because I don't normally look at what I do. And I had a look and started to see all this blood. And so,
okay, that's what I was going to ask you next, Kyah, was about blood and stool. So I'm so happy.
Yeah, my last time I went to the toilet, which is when I got diagnosed, I actually thought I had filled the entire bowl. Like I'm talking like it was major. It was like when you have explosive diarrhea from like a food poisoning episode, that's what it was like for me. And it was literally explosive. And I was in corporate. I was running a board meeting. I ran out, went to the toilet because I thought I can't hold this. I've got to go. I went. There was no stool at all. It was all blood. And I'm talking the whole bowl was covered. I just ended up in tears on the floor. I was only 25. I'm ringing my mother, who's a nurse, by the way. So I understand your medical background with parents. And I'm ringing her and she's like, why the fuck have you not gone to the hospital by now? She's getting up me. She's like, why didn't you tell me about this? And I'm like, because it's been going on for a while. Anyway, ambulance comes, I go to the hospital, and I had internal hemorrhaging so badly that I was kept in hospital for over a week, and I was strapped up to everything, and they're trying to, make sure that I wasn't losing blood. I was getting, blood.
Like
it was intense, right? And so for me, in the next 6 months, and this is where my real love and passion for nutrition came from. If everyone hasn't, well, actually, most people wouldn't have heard this because I haven't shared this. I narrowed in on nutrition as my niche because of this moment in time. I was not going to accept being told that I would have to be on all of these drugs for the next however many years of my life remained. I refused to believe that I couldn't actually fix this internally myself. And I only stayed on the medication long enough to support the initial hemorrhaging that I had. And I think I was on them for about 6 months, and I completely changed my entire lifestyle. And when I say that, I wasn't someone who ate junk food. We didn't. We grew up on farms. We had all fresh produce. Like I didn't have a pizza until I was 18 at a girlfriend's birthday.
Strangest freaking thing that this woman never ate a donut. So she came to the US. What?
I was the cleanest bitch you could come across that had this thing going on, right? But what was interesting was I had actually cut meat out and gone vegetarian and vegan, right? Because I thought that I was having issues digesting meat and things like this. But what it was this ulcerative colitis going on, and I hadn't been diagnosed, didn't know what was happening. I put it down to these meat sources. And that's when I deep dove into nutrition and learning a lot more about everything, and did a whole bunch then of IgG, IgA, all these different tests. And I found out that everything that I was doing was actually making me worse. And so I corrected a lot of my approaches, my protocols, my views, my just, oh my God, everything changed. And I have never stopped learning since. And I have, taken obviously nutrition to the nth degree, and will be eventually doing a master's in it. So, that's how my journey started in nutrition and my love for it, because I actually did medically I did stop the need for all of these medications, and I nutritionally intervened, and I haven't had a flare up since. And they said that I would be bad for the rest of my life. I used to have colonics, colonoscopies done every 3 months, because they wanted to test to make sure that I had, no polyps, no precursors for, the bowel cancer that was obviously, something that people in the family had. But I've been fine. Absolutely fine. My bowel looks great. I'm sure Kyah thinks my colon's fantastic. Now we've opened the floodgates.
Sure is.
Oh man. So Ellie, just to touch on that, because I think that this is something that people will sweep under the rug as well. And so any of you listeners that are here listening to what we're saying here is pooping blood is not normal. And it may not be something that you might think, and this has actually been a situation in the past when I had a very, very unhealthy gut, and I didn't really address gut health, to be honest, until my father got cancer, and I thought he was past, and he was practically past. It was a scenario where he was practically asphyxiated from no red blood cells, because he had lost from internal bleeding from his small intestine. He'd been slowly bleeding out through his stool. for months,
me.
you guys. So he was a dead man walking that finally he just couldn't breathe anymore. And he looked pale, like yellow pale, to the point that you could touch him. And one day I freaked out so much that I touched him and I could not find any color on him. I'm like, Dad, something's wrong. I'm like touching you and you are not, like, you look dead. Like, it was kind of freaking me out. And I had to take a flight that following day. So I just remember being very uneasy. I flew out and I got a call from my sister that night. And I'm like, what's happening? And she's just like, my dad just fell. We just rushed him to the hospital. Well, she wasn't, because remember, my sister's in California. So she's just updating me. Like, I'm trying to find a flight. Where are you? And I'm like, I'm in Florida. You know, she's in California. And I'm just like, I'm getting on a flight tonight. I'll get there. I get to the hospital. They had already done a blood transfusion on him. And he starts losing this blood day after day, day after day. They did 7 blood transfusions over the course of 4 weeks because they could not figure out what was happening. Where is the blood going? Where is it? You know, it's not coming out of his stool anymore because it was so slow, and it was in the small intestine, in the duodenum. And because of all of this, again, you just scratch your head. And I'm not trying to call or, you know, gaslight any type of medics here or doctors or the medical system here, but I got so frustrated to the point that I just was so mad at doctors and nurses for not knowing their shit and for always just brushing the fact that he was, oh, we'll find it eventually. I'm like, it's fucking been a month. I'm sorry, but you guys can't figure out what's wrong with him, and you can't, you know, find what is inside, you know, and what's happening. So when we found out it was in the gut, which we knew it was something in the gut, I just was on a mission, like, just to figure everything, gut health, everything about, you know, and same with you, Allie, like, it's in our kind of field, right, with nutrition and competing, but it's different. It's for gut health. It's like a complete different thing from weight loss and, you know, trying to, you know, heal the gut from the inside out. And anyway, going into the blood, and which is what I'm leading into, is I even at the time I was dealing with some kind of constipation, and I would know it's like, okay, I'm kind of stuck, or maybe I need to go take some fiber. And I think a lot of the times we just go and take some fiber and think that's our issue, or maybe go drink some water. And yes, those two things definitely should be checked. If you're not having sufficient insoluble fiber versus soluble, as well as hydrating, we might be, you know, leading into some of these symptoms. But I actually thought I was getting my period 2 times a month some of these months. And I'm like, is my period here? And I was kind of getting confused because I would go to the bathroom and I'm like, I just had my period a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I'm not irregular. I'm not having any symptoms. You know what I mean? I'm not moody. Like, you just know it wasn't your period, but I really would think it was my period because I would be going to the bathroom and it was actually me being constipated and trying to go to the bathroom. And it was just, you know, tears of your anus. Like, I mean, that's kind of just what's happening, right? Like, and your hemorrhoids are getting built up in your colon and all of this. Like, so what Allie's leading, she had a severe case.
Yeah, it was really bad. And it was really stressful, you know, like I really honestly had that, you know, it's those come to God moments where you're like, wow, you know, life is going to potentially look one way that could really be the polar opposite of what I would wish for myself. Or it could be completely improved should I choose to put everything that I mentally believe at this other alternative perspective of reality, and I work hard at it, right? And so, I mean, you can kind of see, like, there's a narrative in my life. Is there not a pattern showing in my life? Like, this happened at 25, my broken back happened, and then, you know, just the C-section and the prep after that. Like, I don't know how to take one view from someone that they're telling me that that's what my life is going to be like as gospel. I will make my own. Thank you very much.
And I love that.
Yeah. And I think
that's such an inspiring message to send, because you do have the power. You do. And you have to own it.
100%.
It's your freaking body too. This is the other thing, right? Yeah. It's your body, your temple. The only one that actually has control over the health of it is you. Whether you want to take that accountability and responsibility or not, it's fucking facts. Don't blame it on your parents. Don't blame it on your environment. Don't blame it on your government. Don't blame it on your job. It's you. It's how you choose to consume everything that happens to you, for you, and at you, and then what you choose to do with that, right? So again, I think that if you are having some stuff going on, I would be immediately looking at the following things. What are my stress levels doing? Number one. where am I at in my hormone cycle? So where am I at in my menstruation cycle? At what point of the month am I at? Because different parts of the month impact, the bowel and its movement, and also constipation. It happens at certain points. I would then be questioning my fluid intake, my sleep, the things that are imperative for the bowel to even move, and also to have that, rest and digest component. I would be looking at whether or not I'm overworked, overtraining, overtired. I would then be questioning, what are my relationships like? And am I at peace at least enough of the time that I'm not holding on to some shit? Do I have some trauma I need to work through? How unhealed am I? And how much spiritual work do I have to do? And then lastly, I'd find myself a goddamn Kyah and just give her the hose and tell her to put it up there and open the gates.
Yes. And look, I love
literally sounds like our initial consultation.
It really did. It really did. Here you go.
I'm ticking all of my boxes right now.
What I really want everyone to take away here was that we're not labeling through doctors and anyone that just give, even Kyah, when she was told she was going to literally have to have a literally surgery of her whole colon, essentially. I mean, and she said no, right? Like, we're going to find another way. And she found another way, and look at her leading the path now. And same with Ali. Like, she's such an inspirational woman in so many different paths when it comes down to being a mother, an entrepreneur, and really saying no to the norm. And we really want to send that message to anybody that's getting maybe diagnosed with a certain disease, or maybe gut issues, or even hormonal imbalances, or anything that you even get prescribed, even like organ medication. Let's talk about just thyroid medication, heart medication, right? Like blood pressure, all these things that they just tell you must take this script and you're fine, and off you go. And that's my biggest, I think, mission is to really, really get people off of over-the-counter medication and really just be healthy, take organ health absolutely to a different level, and take it holistically, right? And I think that's just been an overall change these last 4 years within my life, my company, my family. Everything that we've approached has just been all really nature, right? Like natural, everything, trying to, like, how much do we talk about nature and going outside, right, Ali? Like, when we talk about mindset and actually training and taking it outdoors, I feel like all of this just ties in, like us actually taking care of our mind,
taking
our
care
gut.
of yourself, exactly. Fueling it, and also making sure that your physiological functions are functioning. And I would go so far as to say, Kyah, and I'm sure this is something that, I see you ladies doing it, and especially with people that are not as educated as me in the space of, food, body, just all of the things that this impacts, is education around, okay, well, what exactly does your digestive tract do? How actually important is it? I actually remember having a couple of my lecturers at university have an argument once about what was the most important in the body between the bowel and the liver. And they literally had this full-blown debate around which function and which organ.
Oh, that's a good debate. They're both such good organs, man.
Oh man, I don't know how I would choose.
Oh man, you got me cringe for a second. I was like, oh shit.
It was actually profound, because it was a really cool thing to witness. It made you challenge and think about things differently, right? And the irony of it is that everyone's quick to talk about detoxifying and supporting the liver, but not many people want to talk about the bowel. They're really embarrassed about it. And that's why, I don't mind sharing my story about what happened to me at 25, because I'm hoping that if someone listens to it, they're going to be like, okay, if I'm showing signs of that, I'm going to go and do something about it earlier. Or that if I'm happy to share it, that, don't feel like you have to be embarrassed about this function for yourself. And I do not hide that I have colonic irrigation done. It might not be the most comfortable thing initially, and you might feel a little awkward at first, but I'm telling you, once you get past that, and once you build a relationship with your therapist, it's fucking nothing. It's like going and having your Brazilian done, ladies. It's not that fucking bad.
Okay, so if it's like a Brazilian, then you do have to work up towards it, because I remember my first Brazilian and I was like, oh my God, I'll never return.
I would take a colonic of a Brazilian any day.
But
I live for both, so I'm like,
I want to know what what protocols, or even like, some type of, supplementation, or if you even recommend supplementation, or even any type, of protocol for the gut that you would recommend our listeners.
That is such a tough question to answer because everyone is so different. And I think that is another thing that natural health, and especially like something that we focus on so heavily at our clinic, is that not every body is the same body, and everyone has different root causes for things. So that's why when you come into our clinic, we do such a big initial consultation, and it's every question that Ali just asked. It's what do you sleep? What's your cycle? What are your stress levels? What are you eating? What do you do? How are you feeling? Like, because it's really funny when people come in, they'll be like, most of the time it's because they're bloated or they're feeling backed up or they're feeling really heavy. They can't shift weight. They're really exhausted and they don't know why. And it's usually one of those sort of more surface level symptoms. And they'll be like, oh, but everything's fine. This and that, like life's good. I'm just busy. I don't know why I'm so bloated, but like nothing I do is really working. And, once we get them like, oh, well, they're like, oh, I eat pretty well. I don't know why I'm constipated. Okay, well, what are you eating? Or, well, most of the time it's, really balanced out. I'm like, what does that look like to you? And then, we dive a little bit deeper. And then, balance? We always ask them to rate your stress levels. Like, how would you stress? Oh, yep, I'm all good. And I can feel the tension, I can feel it emanating off of you. I'm like, okay, we'll touch on that later, and
circle back.
Okay, we'll circle back. There's something there, and I guess, I've been a colon hydrotherapist myself for over 10 years. I've seen thousands and thousands of people. When someone walks in, I could probably guess just by having an initial quick feel of the room, I could probably pretty accurately guess what they're coming in for, what's going on. But it really, a lot of it does circle back to those emotional issues, and stress is such a big one. Because that often drives our eating choices and our sleeping habits and our perceptions. And, it's all well and good to say to someone, well, just stop eating sugar, stop eating so much. But I'm sure you guys know all about this. It's not that easy. And supplement recommendations are really,
that's why I asked. Yes.
Yeah. It's one of those things too, making something that's sustainable for the client as well, because my main focus is, again, so most people will come in, they've got headaches, chronic fatigue, an autoimmune condition, they're not going to the toilet, and they'll come in, they've got this, they have a list of all these really long conditions, and these are my diseases. This is me. And I'm like, okay, are you going to the toilet? Like, have you pooped? What are your bowels doing? And that is where we start. So based on that, it is where we start. And that's why people are like, oh, well, I don't think colonic irrigation could help me because I'm just tired. I'm like, but
tired because of
exactly.
And the only reason why I was asking about that was because I see a lot of people dump in just probiotics for no reason. And I'm like, do you even know what probiotics are? Number one. Secondly, do you even understand there's multiple strands?
Did you actually go so far as to say that maybe the prebiotic is going to be even more important for you than
right.
But so also, do you have a toxic colon, which is not going to be, an environment in which that probiotic is going to thrive? So, that's again a quick fix. It's always looking for that, that quick thing that we've heard about, and this will help me, this will fix me. Well, it's more than that. And for me and for my healing journey and all that, I'm like you, I research everything. I'm huge on gut and nutrition and, know everything and all the different organs in the body. And, recently in the last couple of years, gotten so down deep with the coffee enemas. That's what our line of.
Everyone, I just need to break into this for a second because this is fascinating. So in Australia, you can't actually any longer get glutathione. So they won't even do it in an IV drip. It's all the market. But let me just explain. Glutathione is actually like a major precursor for the detoxification pathways in the body, right? Am I correct?
Of course, we love glutathione.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's your master antioxidant detoxifier. It's a huge antioxidant boost.
Here in the States, we did have Formula Wellness.
So we don't actually have the capacity to be producing and making this stuff, right? So you've got to be consuming, you've got to be getting it from things you consume, and you've got to be, potentially supplementing with it. But these coffee enemas, they give you, what is the percentage increase and direct impact, because it comes directly through colon when you actually have a coffee enema? Because isn't it like a 70% increase, or is it 700%?
700.
I knew it was mind-blowing. So if anyone
mind-blowing
that is having, struggling, if they're estrogenically dominant, if they have those pockets of cellulite, they're just not capable of flushing stuff because their detoxification pathways are clogged up, you're probably largely needing a really good colon cleanse and flush out, but B, you're probably actually needing more glutathione. And this is where these coffee enemas are no joke, mate. They are the duck's nuts. I love them.
They are.
So
I am obsessed.
Are they made out of coffee?
Yeah, it's actual coffee straight up your poo hole.
I love coffee, y'all. But
now you're going to put it in both ends.
Yeah. So about 4 years ago, so I started Bayside Colonics. I've been a colon hydrotherapist for over 10 years. But again, like I'm always researching, and enema bags were actually, an enema was actually such a huge part of my journey, because I struggled with chronic constipation where my bowel would not move. And in between my colonics, so I started off having colonics twice a week to get all that stuff out of my bowel, and then really changed my diet, looked at the inflammation, what I was putting in. Oh, things aren't moving. Probably not the best time to be eating, 2 McDonald's burgers a day, because it's not moving. So changed my diet, went totally plant-based, refined, sugar-free, gluten-free, dairy-free, did a whole bunch of allergy testing with a naturopath, because my inflammation was so high. That was my problem at that time. So that's what I did, and then have refined it over the years and changed things so much. But those initial things have stayed the same. So still refined, sugar-free, dairy-free, and gluten-free, just because the inflammation from my body is an absolute trigger, and I can't digest any of those things. And so basically I started to detoxify, but I couldn't, when I was at home or in between treatments, I started going then weekly, and those other 6 days of the week, I was still uncomfortable and I wasn't going, and it didn't matter how many, magnesium oxide tablets I was taking, all natural, or nothing would get me to go. And my bowel needed some help being retrained. So I actually started doing water enemas at home every morning. And that was my bowel movement. And it gave me instant relief. It got rid of all that gas, it kept things moving, and I was able to then get the freedom back to just live my life. Like I felt great every day. I was having this huge complete bowel movement every day, no side effects, and it actually helped to retrain my bowel because I was going every single day. So once I started doing the water enemas and then really deep diving into cleansing, detoxification, I came across, and I was having these hormonal problems because I had been diagnosed with PCOS, and I did have some, period pain. And the more I healed my gut, the more all of that went. But it wasn't, but I actually was still having some period pain and some hormonal issues until I started doing coffee enemas. And what most people don't realize is that tons of your hormonal symptoms, your PMS symptoms, are often linked to high estrogen. So, and when the liver is not detoxifying that estrogen and we have too much, we get all those symptoms. And as soon as
I'm just mind blown with coffee enemas. I'm just like, wait, so a coffee enema,
mate, it goes like this: you go to your barista and you go, shot for me, shot for the other end. No, I'm joking.
Double shot, please.
No, it's so much better than that. At home in your PJs, you brew it yourself.
And I can brew my own coffee.
You actually brew it and then explain to everyone how it works, Kyah.
Yeah. So anyways, a year after I started my colon hydrotherapy clinic, I realized that people needed these enema kits and you couldn't get them anywhere. And they really have this traditional stigma around being gross and weird. And I just wanted to change that because it's something that I use in my daily life. And I was really sick of being ashamed of all of it. And I really wanted to help other people feel comfortable getting the treatment they needed, because that's what I needed. And so anyways, I designed my own brand of enema kits and started a company called the Happy Bum Co.
So cool, Steph.
Amazing.
Well, a big thing that started happening once I started my colon hydrotherapy clinic, I started sharing my journey and all about colonics on social media. And I had the biggest influx of people messaging from all over the world saying, oh my God, I have had the same issues. I've never heard anyone else talk about it. What do I do? Can I come to your clinic? I have literally had people fly in from overseas to come see me.
That's incredible.
But that's when I realized, I was like, okay, I can't help everyone in Brisbane here. I'm one person in one clinic. We've obviously expanded. I've got 8 therapists that work for me now, but I was like, I can't reach these people. So what's something that they can do at home? And it was the enemas. So now I started the Happy Bum Co. and we started with, coffee enemas. And we've since, we've got so many different blends because there's so many amazing things that you can do with an enema. Like I'm obsessed.
Pretty cool.
Turmeric, hormones, stress relief, everything in an enema is just stronger, and it's so nourishing.
Yeah, because it goes straight to your bloodstream, right?
Straight to your bloodstream.
It goes straight there, which is, I mean, sorry to be gross, y'all, but I mean, drug addicts and everything, they know what's up. They literally stick it up their buttholes. Oh, I'm sorry, but that's what a crackhead.
Straight to the good stuff.
True, they top
get that high, Wow,
take your enema there, you just coffee bean it.
I'm gonna be jumping off the walls off this coffee enema. No, that sounds amazing though. Can you please tell us what that handle for your company is so we can follow it? I'm so interested in seeing what
is. So it's Happy Bum Co. And we have a warehouse in the United States and we have a warehouse in Australia, and it has honestly just taken off. And
clients,
again, we keep it real, but we just keep it real. It's it's backed on my story, but my story is just one of the angles that people are coming. I mean, hormonal issues are huge, but people, like I said before, they come and they have a myriad of problems. Some people are detoxing from mold, and some people have cancer, and some people have autoimmune, and some people have been just so chronically stressed and eating the wrong things. They're so burnt out and their adrenals are just totally effed. And they don't know where to start, and where to start is always your detoxification pathways. And so you have to get everything out to then replenish. So it's first, it's not what can I throw at this fire, it's putting it out. It's washing everything away, cleansing the liver, cleansing the colon, and that the coffee enemas really help to detoxify that extra estrogen in a safe way. And
I'm ordering one right when we get off this call.
Yeah, I thought this was really cool to talk about, because one of the first things that Kyah did for me, knowing what I did for a living, and I was heading into shows and whatever, this is going back 3 years ago, the very first time I saw her, she sent me home with one of these bags. I swear by them. I actually took one with me on my prep for Atlantic City and was running my coffee enemas leading into
Why do I not have a photo of this?
I should take more footage of this shit, but just not the literal shit.
Not the literal.
We do the cute feet on the wall with your little bag, tag, And we do that in the morning, and everyone chimes in. They're like, "Oh, me too."
If we're in this touch, actually, which I thought would be super interesting, and it'd probably be the final thing, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, Kyah. We could literally talk about shit for hours, though. I'm telling you now. Okay, parasites and worms, because we can see those when those come out too, Stephanie, and it's hilarious.
Oh, I've done cleanses before, Ali, but I've not done cleanses to this extreme. Like, I mean, I know it's not extreme, because everything you explained seems pretty easygoing, although
wait till she tells you about some of these little nasties.
I feel this big anxiety over my first time of anything. Like,
watch her page. You'll see.
I'm about to go scope all these videos.
So the page for the poo videos is Bayside Colonics. They're not on the Happy Bum Co page, because you poop those out at home. Bayside Colonics, we get the nitty gritty, and it's honestly incredible. And parasites can have such a profound.
It's Bayside Colonics, you said?
Yeah, Bayside Colonics, and they will post, like, they will literally post like the shit of the day, and it will literally usually be something that has a parasite or a web. I love following the page just to see what other people shit out.
Yeah, so it's a running tab. So it all, like, we try to get as much footage as we can through the day. It's totally, anonymous. We just film the pooches.
Right,
yeah, exactly. Just to clarify though.
They don't tag you. It's just the literal place.
I mean, some clients are so excited. They just want to be like tagged and they want to show all their friends. Like, is my poo video up yet?
That is so
it's hysterical. Funny. It's hysterical. But yeah, it's every day.
If we want
put
to
up
do
videos
something like
of the clients that are coming in. Yeah.
If we want to do something like this here in the States, because I know you guys have a location there in Brisbane, is there someone or a clinic you would recommend here, or a friend that you have here in the States, or maybe a therapist that you know?
Well, the United States is pretty big. So I do know a great clinic in Seattle, though. That's where I started my journey. So that's the Tummy Temple. And
Tummy Temple, okay.
Tummy Temple, they're an incredible clinic. That's what I've modeled my clinic off in Australia. So just the most beautiful energy and souls. And that makes a really big difference. It's because, as you guys know, detoxing and colonics, and anytime the body's imbalanced, there's something we need to let go of, and that is not easy for everyone to do. And a lot of it's emotional, and a lot of the times we're having these problems and our adrenals are really drained because we don't feel safe. And when we're stressed, the body is scanning and it's saying, are we safe? Are we safe? And your body's feedback is no. And so what we've aimed to do, and this was huge for my healing journey, and especially because home wasn't necessarily a super safe place for me. I needed somewhere where my body felt safe to heal and let go, and I could actually empty my cup of what needed to go. And so that's what we've created in Brisbane, is this safe haven. And it's, as soon as you walk in the door, you can feel it. And the people that, I've hired to work with me hold that safe space and are just so genuine and loving. There's no judgment. And so I always encourage people, if you're looking for a clinic, you need to ring up and you need to feel the vibe first. Because you will. And people say this to me all the time. I had a colonic and it looks like nothing like what happens at your clinic. And I'm like, well, my clinic is based on healing.
And even, Kyah, I'll go so far as to say, even finding the different therapist styles and energetic spaces within a specific space too, because for me, I haven't had a single bad experience inside of Kyah's, facility. I've had a few different therapists, and I've had a few that were not as, I didn't release as much with them as I did with the ones that I really connect with real well. Yeah. So there's 2 to 3, and Kyah and Rachel being my 2 main ones, mate, just opens the floodgates real easy. I don't even have to think about it, and it's not a stressor for me. But then there are a couple where you're like, oh, it takes a little bit more. You got to really almost coax yourself into
you're fighting it. You're like resisting.
Correct. They're all lovely.
That's in life. It's finding your person, your people. Exactly. My story. And we do a really we put in a big effort to have all the girls show up on social media, and we put their bios, because different people actually draw in different types of clients. I personally get all of the constipated ones because they've heard my journey and they're like, you get it, because people who have suffered with constipation like mine, and this goes for anyone with bowel issues, people don't, if you've never had them, you don't realize how much it impacts your entire life. And I couldn't wear what I wanted to wear. I couldn't go out. I couldn't eat what I wanted to eat because my stomach was so bloated. I felt it takes a huge hit on your self-esteem, your mental state, your anxiety. Some people won't leave the house because they don't know if a bowel movement is going to come or not. Like, there's just so many different things. So if someone, someone gets it, you're like, I'm safe with you. But then other ones, hormonal issues or menopause, like there's so many different reasons that, my staff have gotten into colonics, that different people resonate with different people. And that's cool. But you need to find your person.
We actually see that even in coaching, like,
exactly what I'm going to
there are so many coaches in our space, and I never ever feel like anyone's competition to me, because we're all like, there's so many people. We all have enough people to service all of our businesses and all be super successful. We don't need to fight for these people, right? But what I do find is, when you just be you, authentically turn up and discuss from your experience and from your lens how things have, transpired, I find people will naturally gravitate to the person that best suits their specific needs to guide them whatever
your people,
challenges or shit they have to deal with,
Yeah.
because they feel like you have the compass and the map, you know, like you've been there, you can show them the way. And
100%.
I truly think everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me, because it's exactly what we see in the coaching space for what we do. You know, I can't even begin to, you know, count. I don't have enough digits to count the many times I've had people say, I've come to you after years of following you, and I've followed you for years, and it's taken me to this point in time for it to be the right time for me to finally do something about it. But you're my person because of X, Y, Z. And it will just be that it is a similar, or they can resonate, or they feel safe enough to be completely open with me about everything they got going on, right?
100%.
So I think that makes perfect sense to me.
It does. Thank you. I was curious on that same note, and what you said about the practice. I mean, this even goes with therapy, like for massage therapists that I've worked with. Oh my gosh, thousands of dollars that, like, it's just been, you try to find your therapist, and it's like years of searching, and finally when you find your person, like, it sucks that you've had to invest maybe, and I say invest because there's no waste. There really is no waste. You're investing in trying to find your person, your coach, your therapist, your Kyah, you know, like, it's really trying to find a place that, like she said, I loved how you explained it's a safe haven, because that's actually the best way to put it. It's a practice that is your safe haven as well. That's the reason why you started this, right? Like, it was how you became safe, how you healed, and you're just teaching others. And it's so powerful to see others leading in a different path, meaning in a different way, like against the norm, against, I guess, what is my goodness, the labels of, hey, gut health is, I mean, don't get me wrong, gut health is everywhere right now, like the talk about it, but how to fix it and how to actually get to the root of the problem is not what we hear and what's being talked about. So I love how much we dove in today on how the gut work. Not just, we didn't talk about functionality of the gut, because I feel like that's something we've even kind of talked about on other episodes, you know, got how gut health links into fitness, but we definitely dove into really the nitty gritty of the longevity, right, of the gut, as well as the backup.
And I really hope that our conversation today has just led to someone maybe not feeling so ashamed about the situation, or maybe actually stopping and reflecting on what might be going on, and not ignorance is bliss mentality, right? Because you should never be ignorant about anything to do with the bowel. It's like the male, you know, prostate. It's the one thing that you should never be ignorant about, right? And that goes for both sexes. So for me, I'm like, I hope all of you listening to this now walk away and go, man, if these crazy bitches have no issue talking about shit this much, then we should be fine to talk about ourselves. And maybe you might want to reach out to one of us to have the conversation. Feel free to, but then it's an okay conversation to have. And I'd also go so far as to say, if you've never experienced one, book yourself in for colonic irrigation as quickly as possible. Kyah, please let everyone know where they can find you if they are in the Queensland, Australia surrounds and they want to travel, or if someone's willing to travel interstate, by all means, please do. She is the best.
Yeah, we have quite a few clients that fly up from Melbourne for a week. We've got a lady who drives down, because the other thing I should mention, you know, one colonic isn't going to fix all your gut health problems. Like anything, nothing is a quick fix. You can get immediate relief, absolutely, but underlying chronic gut issues or constipation, whatever it is that you're suffering from, it's going to take some time. So we always recommend to do at least 3 to 5 sessions close together. So if you could do them in a week, that would be incredible, because like we said, the colon is 2 meters long. Average person's holding 5 to 7 kilos of shit in there. And if we're talking you adding in every day that you're eating, if we can do them back to back, we are going to get back to the beginning of the colon, and we're going to do it quite easily. And you are going to notice those results so quickly. You know, that doesn't work for every person, doesn't work for every budget, but that's where the at-home enema kits can come in as well. But even if you can do, you know, a couple of those sessions close together, and then, you know, based on what you are presenting, how you're feeling, we'll come up with a treatment plan that's right for you. But just know it's not going to be one session, one time off fix. We have a lot of people, sometimes our videos will go viral and things blow up, and then we get all these young girls booking in thinking that they're going to be fixed overnight with one colonic, and it ends up being a little bit crampy. They might not even release anything in the first session. They're like, oh my God, it didn't work. It wasn't like the video. It's like, no, the video is a representation of what's in there and what can come out. your body is still you, and we need to work with that. So book yourself in for a couple sessions and just trust the process. Ask as many questions as you want. The more you feel safe and comfortable, the more you're going to get out of the entire session and experience, and the more healing you're going to do if you're open and accepting of it. You can find my clinic at Bayside Colonics. So we're in Wynnum in Brisbane. But we do, again, we do gut health consultations for all over the world, and we do have the Happy Bum Co, which is our enema kit brand, and there's so much stuff that you can be working on at home as well. And we can really, I had one lady, she just didn't have the budget at the time. She had lost her job, but she knew her goal was to lose a ton of weight, and she was very overweight, and there were all the things were happening in her body. And we sat down, we made a plan for her that worked, and she just stuck to it. It took a lot of ownership on her behalf to make those changes in her daily life. And that's something, with our clients, we also, there's some homework that you're going to have, we can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. That's one of my favorite quotes. So pick something new. And if colonics is something you haven't tried, make that new thing, and we'll start making some new habits and creating some new patterns for your body.
So my 2023, one of my 2023 commitments was that I was having monthly ones. And, look, some months I may have more than one in the month, that's for sure. But monthly ones. I will see you on Tuesday. I'm coming into the clinic on Tuesday because I need my post-wedding cleanse.
Wow. We have so many brides that come in.
What a stressful, but I mean, super exciting, but super indulgent, and also super stressful leading into it. And so I just feel like that stress plus a little bit of indulgence is got me. So
it's gotta go.
Thanks so much for coming on, Kyah.
I love this episode. Thank you so much. This was so awesome.
So welcome. It's so fun to be here. We've been talking about this for a while, so I'm really glad that it's happened. And it's so amazing that you guys are, open to sharing all the benefits of colon hydrotherapy that you've experienced, and just spreading the word, because that's the one thing, it's really been, the benefits have really been suppressed and hidden for a long time. And there's a lot of misconception around colon hydrotherapy. So to just open up those doors again and to allow people to find a therapy that might really, really help them is really amazing. And I hope that there was someone like me or you that was out there listening, and that they get the help that they need because of that.
Oh man, I'm sure everyone loved this episode, because we've been literally looking forward to talking to someone a little bit more into this field. And this is honestly was the best, because I was interested, and now you answered some of the questions that I was on the fence, kind of like, wait, is that something I really need? Like, overall, I think everyone's going to be asking themselves that question at some point. That's why I asked you that as the first question, was like, who's really a good candidate? And by now, at the end of this, I think everyone listening is a candidate, so we should all go do it. And you definitely gained a customer.
Even if it's something you only did, like, say, once or twice a year as a cleanse, just as a freshen up. Like,
I do a cleanse, but it's a different obviously you have to remember, like, the cleanse I'll do it once, and you'll be like, I'm okay. I'll keep doing this annually. I've always loved the benefit of doing at least a yearly cleanse. I usually do it around prep, Ali, because we're obviously trying to just get all the extra excess out as well. So yeah, that's normally when I encourage getting the extra literal shit that I can feel stuck up and hiding the abs and the ab wall. Normally I'm like, it's time to do a cleanse now, make sure the lower abs come through. So no, I think this was very informative, and so it just informational for people to really address and be more alert on some of these symptoms, some of the red flags that you mentioned, which I find a lot of people find normal. I know I did for a long time, and we just have to address them. And I love how much you really emphasize how the gut heals the hormones and everything else within the body. And you are a living example of that. So great story. And thank you again for your time. And Ali, Miss, Kyah, how does that feel? How do you feel being, married?
It's super exciting. Actually, that's what I forgot to say at the start. The first thing we did was go, oh crap, we've booked all these flights already for the whole year in my old passport name. So we had to do a quick check. Like, what do I do? Can I change my flight name, or do I keep so the whole overarching premise is now this: my name is changing on absolutely everything except for my passport until September.
So that's actually what happened to me. Remember, Ali, it wasn't trips planned. It was just the fact that the passport agency was going to take a long time and our honeymoon was already, coming up. So it was like, well, I definitely couldn't change my last name. But no, hey, congratulations again. You were such a stunning bride. And thank you again to our amazing guest that was on today.
Thanks, Kyah.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Follow Kyah.
Pleasure.
Go get a colonic, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, girls.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.